evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. Peter Rowan is one of the finest musicians in America. Growing up in the shadows of the green pastures of Harvard University, he came under the folk spell of the Cambridge, Massachusetts folk scene in the late 50s and early 1960s. In 1965, at the ripe old age of 23, he became the lead singer of Bill Monroe's legendary Bluegrass Boys. He relocated to California and in the early 1970s played with his brothers in the Rowan Brothers, and along with David Grisman and Jerry Garcia formed the bluegrass ensemble Old and in the Way. Peter and I talked about many of these things and all of the great players he had a chance to meet and play with along the way in an interview that took place on April 15th in the lobby of a downtown Minneapolis hotel. Later that evening, Peter did a guest appearance with the jam band The Big Woo at First Avenue. We are also going to listen to some tracks off Peter's new record, My Aloha, a collection of Hawaiian-influenced original songs on the Omnivore record imprint. Peter, what a pleasure it is to meet you. I've been listening to you since the early 70s.
Oh, thank you very much.
You came on my radar when I tracked down the New Riders' version of Panama Red, that great song you wrote.
Right.
And then I read about you. Jerry Garcia mentioned the Rowan Brothers in an interview in Rolling Stone.
That's right. Those are my two brothers, Christopher and Lauren. And they had come out to the West Coast, I guess in the late 60s, early 70s with Dave Grisman. Grisman and I had been in a band called Earth Opera, working with Elektra Records. And
Jack Holzman?
Yeah, Jack Holzman. And Grisman had brought my brothers out to California, and they it was a big awakening for them. Lauren was 17.
Wow.
Chris was like 21 and a half. And I of course, was about 26 myself at the time. So they came west out to Stinson Beach, and I left the band C-Train and kind of wanted to get out there too. The vibe was right, you know. The thing about touring with a band like C-Train is, you know, it's a crackerjack band, you know. It's like tight. It's incredible. The rush of playing on stage was amazing because we rehearsed every day.
And who was in that band, Peter?
Andy Kohlberg from the Blues Project.
Sure.
And a couple of different people, but Larry Adamaniuk ended up as a drummer. He had replaced Levon Helm in the Hawks up in Toronto. Larry Adamaniuk, he's down in Nashville, and I got him down to Nashville. He ended up playing with Sam Bush and then being part of Emmylou Harris's outfit. No, not the Hot Band, but the Nash Ramblers.
Wow.
Yeah. So the band finally came together, you know, with Larry as drummer, Richard Green on fiddle, and Richard had been in the Bluegrass Boys with me down in Nashville with Bill Monroe. Lloyd Baskin on keyboards, Andy Kohlberg on bass, Larry on drums, and Richard on fiddle. And I had managed to get Richard into the Bill Monroe band because the way Monroe was working at that time was just slightly haphazard, but he was very loyal to the people that he had. But not everybody lasts a long time with Bill, and he's a very exacting band leader, and of course his lifestyle was a little bit erratic at the time too. You know, on the bus that wasn't in good repair and was breaking down all the time. This is a hazard to work for.
Right.
But I finally got
Richard. But an honor at the
same
time.
Totally, yeah. And I got Richard in the band, and so the Bill Monroe band from 64 through 66 was myself, Richard Green, Lamar Greer on banjo, and James Monroe on bass. So Richard and I did quite a few projects after that, including one called Mule Skinner that we did when I finally got out to the West Coast. I mean, this kind of a circular history, cycle of collaborations and things. But my brothers had got out, and Columbia Records wanted them, and Grisman was friends with Garcia and got Garcia involved. Garcia played on a lot of the stuff. For some reason, he wasn't on the master recordings, I don't think. He might have played pedal steel on a couple of things. But Dave, the classic situation, Dave Grisman being the producer, it was like, where are the tapes? Where are the tapes? It was on and on and on. Finally, they got loose, and, before the record was released, Garcia had said in Rolling Stone that he thought that Rowan Brothers had basically the excitement of the Beatles in their vocals.
Right.
He was talking about music.
Right.
Well, the record company took that and did a poster of my brothers, two young guys, good-looking guys, and it said, the quote was from Garcia in Hollywood. It said, they're like the Beatles, they're that good. And of course, that's just the kiss of death in the music business.
Right.
It's just like, what a burden to have to, But
it's like being the next Bob Dylan.
Yeah, the next anything.
Right.
And,
but I remember that, Peter, excuse me for jumping in. For some reason, I remember reading that, which is why I started to track you guys down. And Garcia kind of described the sound as bright and shiny.
Yeah.
Right?
They got a bright... What they meant was the vocal sound.
Right.
Was a bright and shiny harmony, two brothers' harmony. They could sing well together. And so, that's... I kind of came in on the heels of that, and it was like, oh, God, the older brother's here, right? And I was going through my Mountain Yogi stage, and I was, like, very unkempt and kind of iconoclastic, somewhere between being a neophyte Tibetan Himalayan Buddhist and a rock and roll, guitar player. And the call to go back to the original sound of bluegrass was very strong. So Dave Grisman and I in those days would get together out there at Stinson Beach in the morning. We'd drink coffee and smoke a lot of dope and play acoustic guitar and mandolin. And that was a lot of sound and a lot of fun. Barefoot, it was the last hurrah of childhood and late 20s. And one day he said, Garcia's just up the hill, and he'd like to get together. He'd like to play bluegrass. He'd like to play some banjo. So we ended up going up to Jerry's house almost every day, every evening, and just playing, going through the songbooks. Grisman's an archivist. I mean, he had all these old songbooks. The Stanley Brothers, Red Allen, Bill Clifton songbook, and all these great old songs that spring really from the Victorian era. They emerged upon the world in the United States about the 1920s and 1930s, but it's really Victorian parlor music, strumming ukulele guitar music. Bluegrass kind of higher-powered it up, right? And Monroe always had a bass player to kind of pump things up, and Bill Monroe spent a lot of time in New Orleans picking up on the jazz and blues. It wasn't like he listened to records, but he stayed in New Orleans for a while when he first got his own band. Now, him and Charlie played the Carolinas and Georgia, Tennessee. That was their territory, him and his brother, a duet. But once his brother and he split up, Charlie left his younger brother Bill with the sedan and left him in Memphis and said, now you can have everything west of here, but my territory's back here, back in the southeast.
Wow.
So Bill, I mean, he was really adventuresome, and he held auditions in a city park, a local park in Memphis, where he was camped. He was camped there. So, I mean, he knew what it was to start over. Start with a fire and have people come and pick, right? And he went, and after that, he was in Memphis, so he went down to New Orleans. Really? This is not in the history books. This is Bill Monroe personal.
I'm loving it.
This is Bill's personal stories to me of what he did, because I used to ask him questions, and because I was coached by Ralph Rinsler, who was a great folklorist and mandolin player, managed Doc Watson, managed Bill Monroe, and worked for the
brought a lot of those guys to Greenwich Village.
Smithsonian Folklife.
Yeah.
He, in fact, Ralph's apartment on West 4th Street was our headquarters up in New York.
Huh.
Yeah, he went down to New Orleans, and that's where he picked up a lot of the music that influenced his bluegrass. And he always said to me, I've had to keep as much out of bluegrass as I put in it. And so he was very choice. But if you listen to his mandolin playing...
That's a brilliant quote.
Yeah. If you listen to Monroe's mandolin playing, his mandolin solos on the blues, like Rocky Road Blues and all this stuff, it's blue. It's not old-time mountain major melodies that he played with his brother.
Now the road is rocky, but it won't be rocky long. Now the road is rocky, but it won't be rocky long. Another man has got my woman and gone. I got the blues, I'm running up the soles on my shoes. I got the blues, I'm running up the soles on my shoes. My girl went away, left me with the doggone blues. Lord, the road is rocky, but it won't be rocky long, long, long. Lord, the road is rocky, but it won't be rocky long. Another man has got my woman and gone.
The number one source of the Twin Cities gay scene is all digital. Follow Twin Cities Gay Scene on Facebook and Twitter. Sign up for the Scene Shot email blast for weekly updates and chances to win great prizes. No app is needed to view the bi-weekly web editions of Scene. It's GLBTQ media for the mobile generation. Find it all at TwinCitiesGayScene.com. That's TwinCitiesGayScene.com.
The local advertisers you hear on AM 950 are the lifeblood of the station. If you find yourself regularly tuning in, or if you appreciate the diversity of content we deliver, please take the time to support our advertisers. Even if it's just to thank them for backing AM 950, your voice and support can go a long way. Help keep the station going strong while investing in our local community. Find the complete list of on-air supporters by visiting the advertisers page at am950radio.com. That's am950radio.com.
Supporting the best local and independently owned restaurants in the Twin Cities has never been easier. You'll find an expansive list of local dining options at eatlocalminnesota.com, from classic American comfort food to authentic flavors from around the world. Cafe Latte offers made-from-scratch soups, salads, sandwiches, and mouth-watering desserts. Stop in the wine bar and enjoy a unique pizza loaded with fresh vegetables and perfectly roasted meats. Over 30 wines by the glass, Cafe Latte highlights Washington State wines and is the perfect destination for date night or an evening with friends. 850 Grand Avenue, St. Paul. Victor's 1959 Cafe has been serving South Minneapolis traditional Cuban food for over 15 years. Victor's is open for breakfast and lunch daily and now accepts dinner reservations too. Stop in and try the Pollo Tropicale or the Sandwich Cubano, which was featured on Food Network. More at eatlocalminnesota.com.
On September 28th, the University of Minnesota Center for Spirituality and Healing is offering a half-day mindfulness meditation retreat, which is open to those who have never practiced mindfulness and those who are daily practitioners. The mindfulness meditation retreat invites you to intentionally step away from daily routines and the busyness of everyday life for the purpose of renewal. Enjoy guided instruction from a skilled mindfulness teacher, sitting meditation, and gentle mindful movement. Space is limited. Register now at csh.umn.edu.
Seward Co-op, serving the community for nearly 45 years, invites you to shop their two convenient locations, both offering the strong commitment to local producers and healthy foods you've come to expect. Seward focuses on locally grown and raised products, fair trade, and environmental sustainability. Shop their selection of meats, artisan cheeses, and house-made baked goods. Find Seward at 2823 East Franklin Avenue or the Friendship Store on 38th Street and 3rd Avenue in Minneapolis. More at seward.coop.
Welcome back to Set 2, the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. Our guest, Peter Rowan, talking about the father of bluegrass, Mr. Bill Monroe.
And, of course, he played his cards close to his chest, and you never give away your secrets.
Right.
You know, but he was the only guy who had the blues in his music. I mean, to the degree where the blues were leading his tones. Mm-hmm. And then he brought in Earl Scruggs, who's a kind of a very major kind of player, a major key player, with those 4-string, 5-string banjo with a droning 5th string. So you had like an 8-string mandolin, a 5-string banjo, a 6-string guitar, a 4-string bass, right? You have all these combinations that are all in basically the same,
like a piano,
European tuning, but what you could do is voice them differently. And Bill played these high blues solos that are actually what a barrel house piano player would be playing with his right hand on the high keys. And he just worked with that. And I did ask him, he said a man could hear any kind of music down there at that time. And I went, mm-hmm.
And what year would that have been?
That would have been, let's see, about in the actual bluegrass as it hit the Opry was 1948. So he left his brother, I think, earlier, 42. He still had a career. He was on the Opry. So, okay, if 25 years on the Grand Ole Opry was 1965, so
1940.
Yeah, so it would have been 40, late 30s, 40, that he went down there with his brother, with his new band, forming down there in New Orleans. And he said, I said, what kind of influence, I mean, what did you hear there? You know, late at night, riding the bus, this old rickety, this bus, through the night, you know. And he would talk. But, you know, I'd sit and listen to him play, and then just kind of like ease into a conversation with him, because somebody said, you don't ask Bill all these questions. And I think it's partly that you don't reveal your secrets. In those days, he wasn't a folklorist where he was going, you know, but later on he spoke about the blues all the time. You know, he said, the blues have been a big part of my music. And he had a black, when he played with as a kid, when he played with his uncle, he had a black man playing a guitar named Arnold Schultz. And so there was all Bill, and Bill took this great harmonica player from Nashville toured with Bill, so he always had a black guy in the band.
Right. Was that D. Ford Bailey?
Yeah, D. Ford Bailey playing harmonica. And I mean, they backed D. Ford and D. Ford. You know, I mean, people don't think of that. And like Bill said, you had jump time, you had sock time. You know, you had the ragging the time, which I think means just kind of just syncopating the beat a whole lot. And you had the slow drag. And I never had heard of the slow drag before he said that. And there's even people in New Orleans of the last generation or so, you know, slow drag somebody. It just meant that they could play that real down, raggy, slow, funky time. And I think where you hear it in the bluegrass was on tunes like In the Pines. I think In the Pines is the crossover tune. I first heard it by Leadbelly, and then I sang it with Bill Monroe. So it's always been one of my favorite, deep old dark Southern blues.
There's a great story, Peter. There was, of course, Minneapolis has had a great folk history, of which Dylan and Colonel Rand Glover came out of.
Right.
There was a guy named Lyle Lofgren who passed away a couple years ago. And he was part of the group that used to sponsor people like Bill Monroe and Elizabeth Cotton and those folks that did wherever the gig was in town. And I saw a picture of, after one of the shows, they'd kind of mix and match the artists, and it was Bill Monroe jamming with Elizabeth Cotton in a kitchen.
You've seen a picture of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was after one of the shows that the Lofgrens put on, and I just... it was a phenomenal picture.
Yeah. Well, I once... we're playing the Guthrie Center. I think that's up here somewhere.
Yeah, the Guthrie Theater.
And Amance Lipscomb was on the show.
Right.
And we were
Was that with Bill?
Yeah, we were backstage, and I asked I was so naive. I should have sung a song myself and just had those guys play on it backstage. But I asked them if they would play together, and they didn't know what to do.
Right.
Well, and then it's just like, duh. I mean, these guys are so enmeshed in their own style.
Right.
But they were there. They were very present, you know.
Right.
And so I sang a little something, you know, and it wasn't like an epiphany at all. It was like those two guys just playing their notes very sensitively, very gingerly.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh, here we go.
Right.
Like, nowadays, everybody thinks, we're jamming, man.
Right,
We're playing as many notes as we can play.
Right.
No, these guys were they left a lot of space.
Right.
But it was real. It was real. It was kind of like...
The slow drag.
What do they call that? Yeah, it was a kind of the slow... What do they call it? Bearding the goat or something?
Okay.
Where you take the obvious and then you make it redundant by trying to do...
Gild the lily.
You know, gilding the lily. A little
But
bit.
I like bearding the goat, though, too.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I guess what I thought in those days, being all hyped up in about the 60s, and that something cosmic would come out of the combination. But what came out of the combination was total respect for each other.
Right.
They just really laid it way back there. Nobody tried to play a solo. And not only that, you know, Manson knew what he knew and Bill knew what he knew.
Right.
And it just like they respected what each other did more than they wanted to be part of creating something in the moment.
But that's kind of like, in a way, though, Peter, that's where you guys, Clarence White, David Grisman, Jerry Garcia, you took those ideas that were out there in the universe and you really brought them forward. You were the guys that, in a way, manifested those experiences, in my eyes.
Yeah. Well, I you know, for me, leaving the East Coast where I'm from, going west was, I wanted to go to Indian country. And so I went out there to southern Utah, which overlooks the Arizona Monument Valley. And I hung out there for a while. And I camped out there. And I wrote In the Land of the Navajo.
Beautiful too.
Oh, the wind blows cold on the trail of a buffalo. Oh, the wind blows cold in the land of the Navajo. In the land of the Navajo. Well, 100 miles from nowhere out on the desert sand, One-Eyed Jack the trader held some turquoise in his hand. By his side sat running out his longtime Indian friend. He vowed that he would stay by Jack until the bitter end. Jack had gambled everything he owned to lead this wandering life. He might have had a happy home or a tender loving wife, but his hunger was for trading trappers' furs for turquoise stone.
More with musician Peter Rowan on the Wall of Power Radio Hour after these messages.
Hi, this is Chad from AM 950. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed roofing, siding, window, and insulation contractor in the metro. Ryan is so excited about working with AM 950 and our listeners that he wants to help us grow.
This is Ryan, owner of Snap Construction. I was friends with Chad long before I started marketing with him. I was a bit skeptical of radio advertising before Chad convinced us to run ads. The advertising's been so successful, we want to help the station grow. We've absolutely loved working with the listeners of AM 950, and we all know how extremely important this radio station is to the community. To help AM 950 grow this summer, Snap Construction will be putting up proceeds to assist the station in marketing on social media. Snap Construction encourages you to follow, engage, share, and interact on the AM 950 social media platforms. Together, we can all work to ensure AM 950 continues to thrive and grow in our communities. We stand by our work with a lifetime craftsmanship guarantee. For a free estimate or more information on our financing, call 612-333-SNAP or check us out online.
The number one source of the Twin Cities gay scene is all digital. Follow Twin Cities Gay Scene on Facebook and Twitter. Sign up for the Scene Shot email blast for weekly updates and chances to win great prizes. No app is needed to view the bi-weekly web editions of Scene. It's GLBTQ media for the mobile generation. Find it all at TwinCitiesGayScene.com. That's TwinCitiesGayScene.com.
Eat fresh and support local farmers by shopping at the Minneapolis Farmers Market. It's peak time at the Farmers Market. Lots of sweet corn, eggplants, fresh and local fruits and vegetables, meat and farmstead goods. Keep the summer bounty all year long because it's a great time to pickle and can. Look for the cucumbers, incredible dill, canning tomatoes. The Minneapolis Farmers Market is open every day, 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. Plus, there's additional locations, Tuesdays at the Hennepin County Government Center and Thursdays at Nicollet Mall. More details at mplsfarmersmarket.com.
Hello, fellow AM 950 listeners. This is Jason from Nightingale at 26 in Lindale. Come experience our delicious signature dishes and exciting rotation of inventive seasonal fare for my wife and chef, Carrie, and her team. Nightingale is the perfect place to gather for any occasion with our extensive wine, beer, and cocktail selection, along with our dedication to great service. We offer a full menu every day from 4 to 1 a.m., 2 award-winning daily happy hours, and weekend brunch at 10. More at nightingalemPLS.com.
And now, the worst commercial ever. Hi, I am Justin Galvin, retired athlete from your local ball team, so I know a thing or two about insuring a landscaping business. I trust the pros, commercial auto and business insurance through Progressive. Get customized insurance solutions that'll hit a grand slam home run for you. Are we done? A totally mailed-in celebrity endorsement. Awful. Whereas commercial auto and business insurance through Progressive is anything but. Visit ProgressiveCommercial.com to quote today. Insurance provided and serviced by Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. It's affiliated and third-party insurers.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Sam Turnberg. Tonight's going to be cloudy with a low around 62. Tomorrow's mostly sunny with a high near 80. Monday, mostly sunny with a high near 83. Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 84. And Wednesday, chance of storms with a high near 78. The Eat Local Minnesota Restaurant of the Week is Cafe Latte. Try their bakery specializing in fresh breads and desserts, including their renowned chocolate turtle cake. Desserts available whole or by the slice. On Victoria and Grand in St. Paul. More details at eatlocalminnesota.com.
You're back with the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. More with my guest, Peter Rowan. Came of age in a very fertile time.
Yeah.
Joan Baez, Rick Von Schmidt.
Rick Von Schmidt, yeah.
Is it Betty Siddons?
Betsy Siggins.
Yeah, Betsy.
She ran the Club 47.
Right.
But even before that, I mean, those people were 10 years older than I.
Right.
So I was a young kid. I was on the periphery, and I came in as a mandolin player, not as a folk singer. Yeah. But the interesting thing, there were people around at that time coming and going between the West Coast and the East Coast. It was very mobile. People were, I was playing a little rock and roll combo in Boston when I discovered the 47 Club. This Marine that I was working on a day job with said, you should go where your people are. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you don't belong doing this. You don't belong here. He said, at lunchtime you play guitar. He said, that's, where your people are. They're over in Harvard Square. So I started hanging out over there, and I met Jim Rooney, Bill Keith, and Eric Von Schmidt and everybody. And
was Eric Anderson around?
Eric Anderson, but, they were the real active folkies. They had gigs. They were going to Greenwich Village and coming back up. There was a lot of traffic between Greenwich Village and Boston, or Cambridge. Mm-hmm. And young and a lot of energy, but we could hear Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. We could hear all the folk singers that came up through Boston. But the first show I went to was even before that. Not that far. When I was 14, I went to a rock and roll show there in Boston, and I heard Chuck Berry. And I guess I got a big dose of rock and roll from Chuck Berry.
Wow, may rest in peace.
Yeah, and, Johnny Burnett Trio were there.
Wow.
Not only that, a bunch of doo-wop bands were there. And the MC was Joe Smith. Now, Joe Smith was a local DJ. And jump forward 20 years after that, we signed with Joe Smith at Warner Brothers. And I asked him, I said, when I was a kid, I went to one of these shows. You were the DJ.
Wow.
In fact, you had the first rock. He was like the Alan Freed of Massachusetts.
Right.
I said, where was that music coming from? He said, well, as a DJ, most of you did dances, and you had a radio show.
Right.
And at the dances, girlfriends of groups would give my boyfriend's 45 RPM record. Right. And I did that too. We recorded a record. I think we made 8 copies, but it went on the air, you know.
Well, linoleum.
You know, we were called the Cupids. So, in a way, to move from rock and roll into string band music was really more about bringing the vocals forward and the beautiful sound of acoustic guitar.
Right.
I just couldn't get enough of that. And my uncle played the ukulele, and my great uncle played a guitar. But
did you hear Elvis too along the way at some point?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, Elvis was God.
Where did you see him?
Oh, I didn't see Elvis. No, not until he was on TV.
Yeah.
You know, and I was looking, you know, I had insomnia last night. I was watching the TV here. You know, the Christian stations are selling Elvis gospel music. And it looks like it was made after his death, because they've got the people from the Statesman Quartet, all these older white gospel groups from the South. And it's films of Elvis singing, like, casually with these guys. And his heart was really in the gospel music.
Yeah. So let me ask you, how the hell did you get an audition with Bill Monroe? You had only been, what, early 20s, right?
Yeah, I was about 20 or 21, and Bill Keith, the fantastic genius banjo player, had been a bluegrass boy and gone with Bill and recorded with him. And his trademark tunes were The Devil's Dream and Sailor's Hornpipe, which he played in a chromatic, a very unusual and highly developed chromatic way. And Bill loved him. Bill Keith left Monroe in New York when Bill wanted to play the Hootenanny Show, who had blackballed Pete Seeger.
Right.
And Bill Keith said, if I wasn't for Pete Seeger, I wouldn't play the banjo. And so he said, I can't play Hootenanny.
Wow.
So he left the band. And so
that's a principled stand.
Yeah, he took a stand. So I was playing mandolin with Bill Keith and Jim Rooney, and Keith called me up and he said, Ralph has asked me to put together a band because Bill's coming up and doing 3 solo dates. He's playing a fiddle date in Vermont, and da-da-da, and they said, we're going to play, it's either Big Hall at Harvard or the Symphony Hall. It was basically Doc Watson and Bill Monroe, and it was Doc's birthday. Wow. And they were doing a concert, right? So there were these other dates.
Sure.
And so he hired, he said, would you, I'm putting a band together. Do you want to play guitar? And he said, you can't play mandolin because Bill plays mandolin. And I'm like, yeah, I think I got that.
Right.
I said, sure. And he said, another thing, don't call me Bill when we work with Bill. He said, call me by my middle name, Bradford. So Bill Keith's show name as a bluegrass boy was Brad Keith, because you can't have 2 Bills in Bill's band.
Right. Another new thing I learned. Right.
Yeah.
You know.
So we did 3 shows in New England, and I was, you know.
Did you get much rehearsal?
Not a whole lot. It's just that, like, we went over the songs.
Yeah.
But Bill was one of those guys. It was like, you've heard this expression, don't leave all the good notes in the dressing room. You know, I mean, Bill always would warm up with a tune or two, you know.
Right.
But he not even finish the tune. He might just play his solo and then go and tune quietly by himself.
Right.
But one thing that I wrote a song when I was with him called The Walls of Time, and it was based on a melody that he had, and then I added all these words. The Walls of Time are partly the image of how nostalgia reaches backwards but it also has a kind of a shadow, or I would say a light that it casts forward, so to speak. It's a metaphorical thing that nostalgia, bluegrass has a lot of nostalgia in it, but it has it in a way that it projects something that transcends time. So the walls of time were both the sort of veils of the mystery of bluegrass and how it came about, what Bill used to call the ancient tones. Those are his words. The keening sound. Keening is what people do at a wake.
Right.
And when he's saying that there's a keening sound in bluegrass, it's like, we're talking about, we're talking deep, cradle to the grave kind of.
Yeah.
But the afterlife too. The Christian hymns promise a transcendent kind of a thing, and in bluegrass with all those 4-part harmonies and just shimmering, beautiful sounds, it gave me a sense of the walls of time. But also, when I first played with Bill, he'd stand 15 feet away and he'd chop on that mandolin. He'd chunk the rhythm.
Right.
That's the wall of time right there, baby.
Right.
That's solid.
Right.
It cut through everything and pulled the time together.
Right.
Because a lot of bluegrass, by folks wanting to play bluegrass, it's funny, bluegrass is, for bluegrass people, you sort of never get enough of wanting to play bluegrass.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you play it, but what you're doing is trying to actually play bluegrass, and it never seems right? But when it's right, then you're like really
right
in the sync, and that's what happened when I worked with Garcia and Vassar Clemens and David was kind of pulling together these disparate strains of music. Vassar's whole history with Bill Monroe, David and my history, and Garcia's absolute buoyant sort of vibe, that was the space in which we found the freedom to kind of, even though we were, David talked about it as the quest, the original bluegrass quest, is the doing of bluegrass is not you're not playing the end result of the doing. You're playing the beginning of the aspiration to play bluegrass. That's why it always sounds so fresh. It's odd. It's weird. It's like we think of a music as, you're accomplished at this.
Right.
You do this. I play the blues. I play blues. I play bluegrass. No, bluegrass is really, in the metaphorical sense, is what happens when you try and reach for that depth of the ancient tones. Mm-hmm. Then bluegrass happens. And you've got all these 5 instruments, And so, we got there with Old Moon Away, but, with Bill...
I just thinking something real quick. I'm so loving this conversation, Peter, is that when you were talking about that, the nostalgic look to the future, I remember the great Wavy Gravy line, I'm nostalgic for the future.
Yeah. Well, that comes from a scientist, actually, The nostalgia for the future. That's the guy who made the geodesic domes.
Buckminster Fuller.
Yeah, he said that, nostalgia for the future.
Really?
Yeah, that's where that came
I was just talking to a guy about geodesic domes this morning. Interesting.
Yeah.
Take what you've gathered from coincidence. Tell us, when you were with Old and in the Way, the Dead were really popular. I mean, not as popular as they eventually became. But it seemed like, and I think I read an interview with you, it was almost like a vacation for Garcia.
Yeah.
To get away from the whole rock stardom thing.
Right. It was refreshing. And if Grisman and I had been a little more conscientious about our roles, well, we wouldn't have done our own thing that much. Old and the Way would have become an institution that would be there for Jerry. And because Mountain Girl, his longtime wife and mother of his children, at the time, she said, you don't know how much this means to Jerry.
Holding in the way is what I heard him say. used to heed the words he said, but that was yesterday. Gold will turn to gray and youth will fade away. They'll never care about you, call you old and in the way. Once I hear tell he was happy. He had his share of friends and good times. Now those friends have all passed on. He don't have a place called home. Looking back to a better day, feeling old and in the way. Old and in the way, that's what I heard him say. They used to heed the words he said, but that was yesterday. Gold will turn to gray and youth will fade away. They'll never care about you, call you old and in the way.
Robert Mueller and national security agencies warn that foreign governments will engage in massive election hacking in 2020, and the state's election systems are wide open. Mitch McConnell is blocking legislation that would secure our election systems. 25 to 30 nationwide protests are scheduled around the country on the Secure Our Vote Day of Action, September 17th. We need you to join us Tuesday, September 17th at noon in front of Senator Amy Klobuchar's office building. A representative from Senator Klobuchar's office and an expert on election system vulnerabilities will speak. Even though Minnesota's election system is relatively secure, no election system is unhackable, and other states are not prepared. Experts say we only have a few months to get these funds released in time for states to complete upgrades by the 2020 election. We must act now, so let's protest and send Moscow Mitch a message on Tuesday, September 17th at noon in front of Senator Klobuchar's office building. It's located at 1200 South Washington Avenue in Minneapolis to demand secure elections. More details at secureourvote.us.
This is New Beginnings, hosted by award-winning broadcaster and speaker Freddie Bell.
Freddie, this generation of the baby boomers, people are living longer, so the baby boomers are taking care of elderly parents.
Let's talk about your health, and specifically, let's talk about Medicare. Our show features the concerns of America's 78 million baby boomers in employment, finance, health and nutrition, and even entertainment.
Join us for New Beginnings, Saturday mornings at 11, brought to you in part by Vision Loss Resources.
With my busy schedule with the colder months finally here, Rudy Luther Toyota saves me time, money, and hassle. A great example, the Luther Advantage Card. With every new and used vehicle purchased, you'll get 3 years of 10 cents off per gallon of gas at Holiday Station stores and $5 off the Works car washes. The Luther Advantage Card keeps you happy while saving you money. It really helps me out, and with my hectic fall family schedule, I really appreciate it. Find out all the benefits yourself at Rudy Luther Toyota, 394 and 169 in Golden Valley.
My part-time service in the Army National Guard makes it possible for me to be more for the community I call home. I'm a better neighbor because my service has taught me how important it is to be a team player. My training helps me in my classes when I give attention to detail to the task at hand. My service also allows me to be there for my community in ways others can't. I help my hometown recover after nature strikes. My service in the Army National Guard allows me to keep my country and those I care about safe from threats. I also work with a network of professionals that help me succeed. Also, the Army National Guard's education benefits make getting a higher education a reality. Being an Army National Guard soldier makes living and serving in my community more rewarding every day. Learn more about how you too can live and serve part-time close to home by visiting NationalGuard.com.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Army National Guard. Aired by the Minnesota Broadcasters Association and this station.
Welcome back to the Wall and Power Radio Hour, set for, this is your host, Paul Metza. A little bit more with our guest, Peter Rowan.
I've been going over to the Hawaiian Islands for the past few years for my health. It's nice to be in a climate where the water and the air and your body temperature are within 10 degrees of each other. That's kind of a pleasant feeling.
It's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. But, I've fallen in with some of the local players there. Now, I went, historically, Jimmy Rogers, some of his great recordings in the 20s were with Hawaiian musicians. Mm-hmm. Joe Kaipo, steel play. Basically, they played steel on acoustic guitar. So, one of the sounds of the 20s where Bill Monroe was picking up as a teenager on stuff was Hawaiian influenced music. Now, Bill Monroe wrote a song called Kentucky Waltz. Well, in 1916, when Bill was only 3 years old, that song was recorded in Hawaii. It's Pu'alia. It's called. It's about a flower, of course. And it was done by, I can't remember, but it was an original Hawaiian song. Da 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 da. So there was a Hawaiian recording, and the guy played mandolin on the recording, and he played just like Bill was going to play 30 years later. I mean, with this sense, it was a waltz, but he's playing triplets. Da 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 da. And when I heard that over there in Hawaii, it blew my mind, because the people that we were hanging with, the Hawaiian musicians, were going, "Oh yeah, man, you're steeped in this lore of Bill Monroe, who came from Jimmy Rogers, and Jimmy Rogers had ukuleles and slide guitars in his band." So I started writing songs. I wrote one about Jerry Garcia called Jerry in the Deep Blue Sea. And I have this. I'm going to give you this. I've got one copy with me.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, man, it is killer. It's called My Aloha. And it's, 10 or 11 new songs played with what Jimmy Rogers would have played with, the ukulele and slide guitar, but from the Hawaiian point of view.
Right.
And when these guys, I was really, every time I get into these things, I'm a little unsure,
Right.
And these guys, well, the ukulele player just said, "I think you're writing Hawaiian music now." And I said, "Well, man, if you think that's what I'm doing, I'm okay with that." So I kind of got the green light.
Wow.
And I started putting in these chord changes that are everything that's missing from bluegrass. Bluegrass is 1/4/5.
Right.
And even in simpler than that, in a way.
Right.
But, I'm going to be recording some bluegrass for Rebel Records, and it's just 1/4/5. But there's one song that has a 2 minor, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to have that in there, written by Bob Dylan.
Wow.
But my new thing, and it's just coming out now, is My Aloha. And, for my voice, it's the perfect place. You don't have to push hard to crack the yodel.
Right.
You can sing falsetto in this music.
Right.
And that's what Bill did. So that was another influence that he never talked about. But Monroe always talked about my other music. And we'd be going, it was like a guessing game.
Right.
I said, well, what is it like? And he'd go, well, it might have a slide guitar, but not a dobro. I mean, what's he talking about? He said, the little instruments, what are they called? And he knew exactly.
Right.
It's like, 3 syllables, 4 syllables, ukulele, And that was a game he played with this band.
Right.
And he was basically talking about a huge influence on him that he never, ever went public to talk about. The mellifluousness, there's so many influences, but Bill made his own music. That's the thing. Pete, I've had to keep as much out of bluegrass as I've kept in it.
That was brilliant.
He was being honest. And he would say, I would never steal another man's note, but I might write one song of another.
Now, have you ever done a presentation with your songs and these stories?
Yeah, I'm doing that more and more. I'm playing a lot of solo gigs where I am sort of a historic narrator.
Yeah, because you're perfect for it. You were there.
Yeah, I'd like to find, in terms of presenting it live, I suppose small theaters would be the best thing. There's always this rock and roll thing going on, too. Like tonight with Big Whoop, I don't know if the audience would be quiet enough for me to tell the story.
Right.
It's going to be pretty much energy. And so that's always been the push-pull in this whole scenario, this whole career of, you know, you got to, as the English say, give it the stick, which is probably a farming term.
Right.
Whack the bullock.
Well, you're a survivor, and you're thriving, and you told me stories I would never have heard unless I sat down and talked with Peter Rowan.
Right.
I look forward to hearing the record.
Thanks, man.
You have a great gig tonight. I've got a few things for you. That's just really beautiful. Tell people, I know you're also, I don't know if you're practicing or a Lamps, but you're a Buddhist. Tell people really simply in 25 words or less your approach to life.
Well, you know, the only difference between meditating and not meditating is this fundamental ignorance of knowing or thinking that you're not meditating. Because there is nothing else going on but meditation. You know, you can sit down and kind of like, you know, get in the groove of it, right? That's always helpful. But sometimes there's no time. And you've just somehow got to be in that presence of mind. And I don't know if it's less a force of will than it is being decisive about the moment of what you might call illumination.
I'm going swimming in the deep blue sea, just these lonely whales and me, deep down in the blue Pacific glow. It's only a matter of time till you'll be mine. At least that's how the story goes.
Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This show is produced by Paul Metsa, engineered by Paul Sowie. We'd like to thank our guest, Peter Rowan. More on Peter at peter-rowan.com. Get his great new record, My Aloha, at omnivorerecordings.com. This show was dedicated to the memory of the late, great Jimmy LaFave, who passed away on May 21st, 2017. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.